"You were never supposed to be born," he said. The words echoed through the sterile hospital room as my father's frail hand gripped mine. His once strong fingers now felt like brittle twigs wrapped in tissue paper. The cancer had eaten away at him for months, transforming the towering man who had terrified me my entire life into this shell of bitterness and regret. I should have pulled away, should have let 40 years of pain and abandonment fuel my rage, should have reminded him of all the birthdays he missed, the graduation he skipped, the wedding he refused to attend. But instead, I leaned forward, pressed my lips to his wrinkled forehead, and whispered, "I forgive you anyway." His eyes widened in shock, pupils dilating against the pale blue irises I'd inherited. A tear slid down his hollow cheek. It was the first time I'd ever seen Thomas Wilson cry. The monitors beeped steadily beside us, counting down the moments he had left in this world. Outside, a violent thunderstorm lashed against the windows of Boston Memorial, as if even the heavens couldn't contain their fury at his confession. But inside, in that moment, a lifetime of questions finally had their answer. "Your mother and I," he started, voice breaking. "We never planned, never wanted." "Shh," I soothed, though my heart was shattering. It doesn't matter now, but it did matter. It had always mattered. Every cold shoulder, every missed call, every Christmas card returned unopened. They all suddenly made perfect, horrible sense. I wasn't just unwanted. I wasn't supposed to exist at all. The nurse appeared at the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Calloway, there's someone here to see you." I turned, expecting my husband Richard, but instead saw the tall, elegant figure of my mother's sister, Aunt Vivian. She hadn't changed in the 20 years since I'd last seen her. Still perfectly coiffed silver hair, still dressed in expensive cashmere, still wearing that expression of barely disguised disapproval. Her eyes flickered to my father's bed, then back to me. "Eleanor," she said, voice clipped. "I came as soon as I heard." "How did you even know he was here?" I asked, bewildered. My father and Aunt Vivian had despised each other for as long as I could remember. She stepped into the room, her Louboutin heels clicking against the linoleum. "Your mother called me." I froze. "My mother? But she's been dead for 15 years, yes," Vivian finished. She glanced at my father, who had turned his face to the wall. "But that's not the mother I'm talking about." The world seemed to stop. The beeping monitors, the howling storm, even my own heartbeat, all faded to silence as Vivian reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a yellowed envelope. "Eleanor," she said, her voice softer now, almost gentle. "There's something you need to know, something we've all kept from you for far too long." My father made a strangled sound from the bed. "Don't," he rasped. "Vivian, please." But Aunt Vivian's eyes were locked on mine as she held out the envelope. "You deserve the truth about who you really are." My hand trembled as I took it from her. The paper felt heavy, weighted with secrets. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman with my eyes, my chin, my smile. But it wasn't Sarah Wilson, the only mother I'd ever known. "Her name is Catherine Green," Vivian said softly. "She's your birth mother, and she's alive." The room began to spin. "That's not possible," I whispered, though deep down, a part of me had always known something wasn't right. The feeling of being an outsider in my own family, the inexplicable gaps in my childhood photographs, the whispered conversations that stopped whenever I entered a room. "She wants to see you," Vivian continued. "After all these years, she finally found you." My father's monitor began beeping faster. "Eleanor," he called, his voice desperate now. "Don't listen to her. Your mother and I, we protected you. We saved you." Aunt Vivian's face hardened. "Is that what you call it, Thomas? Saving her? Or was it stealing?" Before I could react, the door burst open again. A tall man in an expensive suit stood there, his face a mask of cold fury as he locked eyes with my father. "Hello, Thomas," he said, voice like ice. "It's been a long time." My father's face went sheet white. "James," he whispered. "No, this isn't happening." The stranger, James, stepped into the room and placed a protective hand on Aunt Vivian's shoulder. Then he turned to me, his expression softening. "Eleanor," he said, his voice breaking on my name. "My God, you look just like her." "Who are you?" I demanded, though something in his eyes, my eyes, already told me the answer. He straightened his shoulders. "My name is James Green. Catherine is my wife." He paused, swallowing hard. "And I'm your father. My name is Eleanor Calloway. And until yesterday, I thought I knew exactly who I was. A 50-year-old elementary school principal, wife to Richard for 26 years, mother to twin boys now in college, daughter of Thomas and Sarah Wilson, though I'd spent most of my life feeling invisible to them both. I live in a tidy colonial in Lexington, Massachusetts, 15 minutes from the school where I've worked for 2 decades. My life has been orderly, predictable, built on routine and careful planning. Each morning, coffee at 5:30 a.m., crossword puzzle by 6 woo, at my desk by 7:15. I've spent years making sure everyone around me feels valued, seen, protected, perhaps because I never felt those things growing up. When the call came about Dad's terminal diagnosis, I didn't hesitate. Despite the decades of emotional distance, despite his apparent indifference to my existence, I took a leave of absence and moved him into my home for hospice care. Richard didn't understand. "After everything, you're still trying to win his approval?" he'd asked. But it wasn't about approval. It was about doing what was right, what was decent. It was about not becoming the cold, detached person my father had always been. For 6 weeks, I bathed him, fed him, administered his medications. We barely spoke. He watched baseball games on the small TV in the guest room, while I graded papers or prepared school budgets in the armchair beside his bed. Occasionally, I'd catch him watching me with an odd expression. Not quite regret, not quite affection, but something unsettled and questioning. When the hospice nurse suggested we move him to the hospital for his final days, I wasn't prepared for his panic. "Don't let them find me," he'd muttered, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. At the time, I'd attributed it to medication-induced confusion. Now I understood. He'd been hiding all along, not just from emotions, but from the truth. In the sterile silence of my kitchen this morning, I spread out the contents of Vivian's envelope across the granite countertop, the photo of Catherine Green, my biological mother. A birth certificate with my name crossed out, replaced with Eleanor Wilson. A decades-old newspaper clipping about a missing child. And a handwritten letter, dated last week. "My dearest Eleanor, for 38 years, I've searched for you. Every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone I imagined you experiencing, I lit a candle and prayed you were safe, loved, happy. When the private investigator called last month to say he'd finally found you, I collapsed with joy. I don't know what Thomas and Sarah told you about me, about why you grew up calling them mother and father. I only know that on September 3rd, 1975, I went to buy groceries, leaving you napping while your father worked in his home office. When I returned, you were gone. The police suspected your father at first. Custody disputes were common, but James was as devastated as I was. I've never stopped looking. I've never stopped loving you. If you're willing, I'd like to meet. If you're not, I understand. Either way, I want you to know that losing you was the greatest tragedy of my life, and finding you again is my greatest blessing. With all my love, your mother, Catherine." My hands shook as I folded the letter. Outside, rain continued to pelt against the windows, mirroring the storm inside me. How do you process learning that your entire life has been built on a lie? That the cold, distant parents who raised you actually kidnapped you from a family that wanted you? "Ella?" Richard stood in the doorway, his reading glasses perched on his head, concern etched across his familiar face. In his hand was a mug of tea, a peace offering after our argument the night before. He'd been shocked when I returned from the hospital with Vivian and James, even more shocked when I explained who they were. "It's insane," he'd insisted. "People don't just steal babies. There has to be more to the story." But he hadn't seen my father's face when James walked into that hospital room. He hadn't witnessed the instant, horrible recognition. "I found more," I said quietly, pushing the newspaper clipping toward him. It was a national story. Baby girl taken from home in Waltham. Mother and father desperate for answers. Richard sat heavily at the island counter, scanning the article. "Jesus," he whispered. "But why would they do it? Your parents, the Wilsons, they weren't criminals." "I don't know," I admitted. Dad refused to explain before they sedated him. And with Mom gone, Richard reached across the counter to squeeze my hand. "What will you do about—" He nodded toward Catherine's letter. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number, but the area code was Boston. "Hello?" I answered, my voice steadier than I felt. Mrs. Calloway? A clinical voice. This is Boston Memorial. I'm afraid your father has taken a turn. You should come quickly. I grabbed my keys, heart pounding. I need answers, I told Richard, before it's too late. But as I backed out of the driveway, another thought surfaced. Colder, sharper. What if I didn't want his answers? What if, after all these years of seeking his approval, his affection, what I really wanted was justice? For the little girl who was stolen, for the mother who spent decades searching, for the life I should have had. The hospital loomed ahead, gray and imposing against the stormy sky. Somewhere inside, Thomas Wilson was dying, taking his secrets with him. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I was going to get the truth, all of it, no matter how ugly, no matter how painful. And then I was going to find Catherine Green, my real mother. The hospital corridor stretched before me like a fluorescent-lit gauntlet. Each step toward my father's room felt heavier than the last. What more could he possibly say that would make any of this right? When I reached his door, I paused. Voices drifted from inside. Hushed. Urgent. I recognized Vivian's cultured tones immediately. You can't take this to the grave, Thomas. She deserves to know everything. It's not that simple. My father's voice, weaker now but still stubborn. You don't understand what we did, what we had to do. Had to? A male voice. James, you stole our child, destroyed our family, took away our daughter's right to know who she really is. And you talk about necessity? I pushed the door open. 3 faces turned toward me. Vivian's concerned, James's anguished, and my father's afraid. I'd never seen fear on Thomas Wilson's face before. It transformed him, made him small. Dad, I said, the word sounding strange now. The nurse said you were asking for me. James stepped back, making room for me beside the bed. Eleanor, he said softly, if you'd prefer privacy? No. My voice came out firmer than I expected. I want you all to stay. I want everyone to hear this. I turned to my father. I want the truth. All of it. Before it's too late. Thomas looked beyond me, to the window where rain streaked like tears down the glass. You won't understand, he whispered. Try me. He sighed, the sound rattling in his chest. Your mother, Sarah. She had 3 miscarriages before we saw you. Saw me? At the park. In Waltham. He closed his eyes, as if he could shut out the memory. Sarah was unstable after the last pregnancy. The doctors called it severe depression, said she might need hospitalization. But then we saw you, playing in the sandbox. So perfect. So beautiful. And the woman watching you? She was on her phone, barely paying attention. My stomach lurched. Catherine? I looked at James, who had gone pale. She was talking to me, James said quietly. I called to tell her I was running late, that a client meeting had gone long. Thomas continued as if James hadn't spoken. Sarah couldn't take her eyes off you, said you were the answer to her prayers, that God had shown her the child meant to be ours. So you just took me. The words felt impossible to say. Not then. We watched you for weeks, followed Catherine to learn her routines. His eyes flicked to James. We saw how busy she was with her career, how you were often with nannies or at daycare. Sarah said you needed a real mother, a full-time mother. Catherine was a pediatric surgeon, James interjected, voice tight with anger, saving children's lives. And you judged her for that? We convinced ourselves we were rescuing you, Thomas continued. Sarah had this whole narrative, that Catherine was neglectful, that you weren't properly loved. She talked about it constantly until I started believing it too. I felt sick. So you planned it? Sarah did. Watched the house until she knew when Catherine would be out. Knew I had the skills to get in without leaving evidence. He looked away, ashamed. I was a locksmith back then. The room swam around me. All those years of feeling like an intruder in my own home, of craving affection from parents who seemed perpetually disappointed in me. It wasn't just emotional dysfunction. It was guilt. But someone who steals a child, I whispered, they don't just go back to normal life. How did you get away with it? How did no one know? Thomas's laugh was bitter. We moved to Springfield the next day. Sarah had already rented an apartment under her maiden name. We stayed for a year, barely going out. Called you Eleanor instead of your birth name. By the time we came back to Boston, you were different. Longer hair, a year older. No one connected you to the missing child. Vivian made a small, distressed sound. I suspected, she admitted, not meeting my eyes. Not at first, but years later, When I saw a documentary about the case, you had this birthmark on your shoulder, just like the missing girl. And you said nothing? James asked, incredulous. I confronted Sarah, Vivian whispered. 10 years ago. She swore me to secrecy, said it would destroy everyone's lives if the truth came out, that it was too late to undo what was done. That's why she cut you out, I realized, pieces clicking into terrible place. All those family gatherings you stopped coming to, the way she'd change the subject whenever I mentioned you. Vivian nodded miserably. When she died, I promised myself I'd tell you someday, but the years passed, and it never seemed like the right moment to shatter your world. Then Thomas got sick, and I knew time was running out. So you contacted us, James said. I found Catherine through a support group for parents of missing children, Vivian explained. I couldn't live with the secret anymore. I turned back to my father, fury replacing shock. Did you ever regret it? Did you ever think about what you were doing to her? I pointed at Catherine's letter on the bedside table, where I'd placed it upon entering. She spent decades searching for me, decades thinking I might be dead or worse. Of course I regretted it. He snapped, a flash of the stern father I remembered. But what was I supposed to do? Turn myself in? Go to prison? Destroy Sarah? She wasn't well, Eleanor. Taking you, it saved her. But it damned me. It damned us both, I replied coldly. You made me complicit in your crime just by existing in your home, calling you Dad, never knowing I belonged somewhere else. His monitors began beeping faster. You were loved, he insisted, reaching for my hand. Sarah adored you. I pulled away. Sarah was obsessed with me. There's a difference. And you could barely stand to look at me. Was that guilt? Or did you just never really want me at all? Pain crossed his face. I wanted to protect Sarah, and later, looking at you reminded me of what we'd done. But I did love you, Eleanor, in my way. Your way, I echoed. Was your way worth destroying their family? Worth making Catherine and James suffer for decades? Thomas didn't answer. His eyes drifted to James, who stood rigid beside the window. I won't ask for forgiveness, he finally said. I know what we did was unforgivable. Yet I forgave you anyway, I reminded him, voice breaking. This morning, before I knew the truth, I forgave you for saying I shouldn't have been born. But now I understand. You weren't talking about not wanting a child. You were confessing to the kidnapping. He nodded slowly. I needed you to know. Before the end. Know what? That my entire life has been a lie? That the cold, judgmental people who raised me weren't even my real parents? That I had a mother out there who actually wanted me? My voice rose with each question until I was nearly shouting. Eleanor, James said gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. I shrugged him off. No, don't tell me to calm down. Don't tell me to understand. There's no understanding this. I glared at Thomas. Do you have any idea what you took from me? From all of us? Thomas closed his eyes. It was wrong, he whispered. All of it. And I'm sorry. More than you'll ever know. But his apology came 40 years too late. And as the monitors began to wail and nurses rushed in, I realized that Thomas Wilson would die with his confession, but I would have to live with it. The rain had stopped by the time I left the hospital. Thomas was stabilized but unconscious, machines breathing for him now. The doctor had given him hours, maybe a day. I should have felt something. Grief, anger, relief. Instead, there was only numbness, as if my emotions had short-circuited from overload. James had offered to drive me home, but I declined. I needed space, time to process. How do you reconcile 50 years of identity with the revelation that none of it was true? Instead of going home, I found myself driving aimlessly through Boston's western suburbs. Without consciously deciding to, I turned onto the Mass Pike, then exited at Waltham, my birthplace, the city where my life was stolen. The neighborhoods had changed in 50 years, but something pulled me forward, a homing instinct I couldn't explain. I slowed as I entered a quiet residential street, lined with well-kept older homes. Maple trees arched overhead, their leaves just beginning to turn gold and crimson. Something about this place felt achingly familiar. I parked in front of a blue Victorian with white trim and a wraparound porch. Before I could question what I was doing, I was standing on the sidewalk, staring up at the house. "Can I help you?" I startled. An elderly man had emerged from the neighboring house, regarding me curiously. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I was just... Do you know who lives here?" He studied me for a moment. The Morgans. Nice young couple. Moved in about 5 years ago. He tilted his head. But you're not looking for them, are you? No, I admitted. I was wondering, who owned this house in the 1970s? His eyes widened slightly. The Greens, he said. James and Catherine. Lovely people. Had a terrible tragedy. Their daughter was taken. I finished quietly. He nodded slowly. Recognition dawning. My God, he whispered. You're her, aren't you? Little Lily. Lily. My birth name hit me like a physical blow. Lily Green. Yes, I managed. I just found out yesterday. The old man, he must have been in his 80s, reached out as if to touch me, then seemed to think better of it. I'm Arthur Donahue, he said. I've lived next door since '69. I was here that day. You were? He nodded gravely. Heard Catherine screaming when she came home and found you gone. Called the police myself. Never heard a sound like that before or since. Pure anguish. He shook his head. They searched for months. Posters everywhere. It destroyed them. I swallowed hard. Do you have any pictures? From back then? Arthur's expression softened. Come inside. Please. I followed him into a small, tidy living room cluttered with photographs. While he disappeared into another room, I examined the framed images that covered nearly every surface. A woman I assumed was his wife. Children, grandchildren, scenes from a long and loving life. Here we are. Arthur returned with a worn photo album. Catherine asked me to keep this when they finally sold the house. Said she couldn't bear to look at the old memories, but couldn't bring herself to throw them away either. He opened the album, and suddenly I was looking at my first home. The blue Victorian, decorated for Christmas. A young couple on the porch, the woman heavily pregnant, both beaming with excitement. That's a few months before you were born, Arthur explained. They'd been trying for years. Catherine had several miscarriages before you. I froze, the parallel to Sarah Wilson's story unsettling me. But unlike Sarah, Catherine had eventually succeeded in having her baby. Arthur turned the page. Now Catherine was holding a tiny infant, looking exhausted but radiant. James sat beside her on a hospital bed, one finger caught in the baby's, my tiny grasp. You were born on May 12th, 1975, Arthur said. Catherine was in labor for 20 hours. James called us from the hospital, so excited he could barely speak. More pages, more glimpses of a life I should have had. First bath, first smile. Catherine in scrubs, holding me before leaving for her shift at the hospital. James reading to me in a rocking chair, my tiny head against his chest. They adored you, Arthur said softly. Catherine arranged her surgeries around your schedule as much as possible. James worked from home 3 days a week, pretty unusual back then, so he could be with you. Another page. A first birthday party. Me in a high chair, face covered in cake, reaching toward the camera with frosting-covered hands. A group of adults laughing in the background. That's us. Arthur pointed to himself and a pretty woman beside him. My wife Eleanor was your godmother. I looked up, startled. Eleanor. He nodded, smiling sadly. Yes. Strange coincidence that your kidnappers chose that name. Maybe not a coincidence, I murmured, thinking of the photos of me as a toddler that had always seemed to start abruptly, with no baby pictures. Had there been some faint memory of my godmother's name? Arthur turned to the last page. Me, around 3, on a swing set in the backyard. Catherine pushing me, both of us laughing. The date stamp read, August 28th, 1975, days before I was taken. This was the last picture, Arthur said softly. After you disappeared, they stayed for almost 2 years, hoping you'd be found. Catherine took a leave from the hospital, dedicated herself full-time to searching. James hired private investigators, offered rewards. He closed the album. Eventually, it became too painful to stay. Too many memories. They moved to Vermont, but the marriage couldn't survive the loss. Catherine threw herself into her work, became one of the top pediatric surgeons in the country. James never remarried. I pressed my hand against the closed album, as if I could absorb those lost memories through my fingertips. Did they have other children? Arthur shook his head. Catherine couldn't bear the thought of replacing you. And after they separated, I think that door closed for both of them. The realization was crushing. Not only had Thomas and Sarah stolen me from my parents, but they'd also stolen my parents' chance at future children, at a continuing family. May I hesitated. Could I borrow this? Just for a few days? Arthur's smile was gentle. It's yours, Lily. It's always been yours. I clutched the album to my chest, this tangible evidence of my erased beginnings. Thank you. As I stood to leave, Arthur caught my arm. Catherine never gave up, he said fiercely. Every year on your birthday, she'd call us, just to talk about you, remember you. Last year, on your 49th, she told me she still believed you were out there somewhere. My eyes filled with tears. She was right. She's a remarkable woman, Arthur said. Brilliant doctor. Saved countless children. I always thought it was her way of honoring you, saving other people's children when she couldn't save her own. Outside, the afternoon light was golden, autumn air crisp with promise. I sat in my car, the photo album on my lap, and did something I'd never allowed myself to do in the sterile, emotionless Wilson household. I sobbed. For the little girl who was taken, for the parents who never stopped loving her, for all the birthdays and Christmases and ordinary days we should have shared. The GPS on my phone showed Catherine Green's current address, a townhouse in Cambridge, less than 20 minutes away. She was so close, had been close all these years while I grew up believing I was someone else entirely. My phone rang. Richard, checking on me. The hospital called, he said. They don't think your father will make it through the night. I looked at the album in my lap, at the parents who had wanted me, planned for me, loved me. Then I thought of the man in the hospital who had conspired to steal me from them. He's not my father, I said quietly, and I've already said goodbye. Cambridge in autumn had always been my favorite place. The historic buildings backlit by fiery maples, students hurrying across Harvard Yard clutching coffee and possibilities. But today, driving toward Catherine Green's address, the familiar streets felt threatening, as if they might shift and change beneath my tires, disorienting me further. My phone buzzed with texts from Richard, from Vivian, even from the hospital. I ignored them all. Whatever was happening with Thomas Wilson, it would have to happen without me. Catherine's townhouse was in a quiet neighborhood near Brattle Street, elegant brick with black shutters and a glossy red door. It looked exactly like the home of a successful doctor, tasteful, understated, exuding quiet confidence. I parked across the street, the photo album heavy on the passenger seat beside me. What was I doing here? I hadn't called ahead, hadn't prepared what to say. 50 years of missing history couldn't be bridged with a casual knock, and hello, I'm your long-lost daughter. As I debated my next move, the red door opened. A woman emerged, tall, slender, with silver-streaked dark hair cut in a stylish bob. She wore tailored slacks and a blue cashmere sweater, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. Even from across the street, I could see my own features reflected in hers, the high cheekbones, the straight nose, the way she tilted her head slightly as she checked her mailbox. Catherine, my mother. She was just turning to go back inside when she glanced up, looking directly at my car. Our eyes met across the distance, and I saw her freeze, one hand clutching the mail to her chest. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, as if drawn by an invisible force, she stepped off her porch and crossed the street. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was open my car door and stand on shaking legs as she approached. Lily? Her voice was barely a whisper, hopeful and terrified at once. I nodded, unable to speak past the knot in my throat. Her hand trembled as she reached toward my face, stopping just short of touching me. Is it really you? It's me, I managed. I just found out. Yesterday. A sob escaped her, quickly stifled behind her hand. May I? She asked, arms lifting slightly. I stepped into her embrace, and something that had been broken inside me for 50 years finally clicked back into place. She smelled like lavender and vanilla, and her arms were strong around me, holding me as if she'd never let go again. I knew, she whispered against my hair. I always knew you were alive. I could feel it. We stood like that, locked together on the sidewalk, until a passing car honked and broke the spell. Catherine pulled back, wiping tears from her cheeks. Please, she said, come inside. Her home was warm, filled with books and art and plants, so different from the austere, untouchable perfection of the Wilson house. Photos lined the mantel, and I was drawn to them immediately. Many were of a younger Catherine in scrubs, often with children, her patients, I assumed. But prominently displayed was a picture of me as a toddler, the same one from Arthur's album, me on the swing, laughing. I kept it out always. Catherine said softly, noticing where my attention had gone. To remember your laugh. I turned to her, clutching Arthur's album. He gave me this. Your neighbor. Catherine's eyes widened. Arthur? You found Arthur? I went to the house, in Waltham. I don't know why, I just felt pulled there. She gestured to the couch, and we sat, the album between us. Arthur and Eleanor were our best friends, she explained. They helped us search for months. Eleanor passed 10 years ago, but Arthur still calls me every year on your birthday. He told me. He said you never gave up. Catherine's smile was sad. How could I? You were my miracle. After 4 miscarriages, the doctors said I'd never carry to term. But then you came along, perfect in every way. She hesitated. May I ask, what was your life like? Were you happy? The question struck like a physical blow. How could I tell this woman who had spent 50 years imagining, hoping, praying for my well-being that my childhood had been cold and lonely, that Sarah Wilson's mental health had deteriorated over the years, her initial obsessive love for me twisting into something controlling and suffocating, that Thomas had been distant at best, emotionally abusive at worst. It was complicated, I finally said. The Wilsons weren't demonstrative people. Catherine's eyes filled with understanding. They didn't love you the way you deserved. Sarah tried in her way, but she was unstable, depressed, obsessed with perfection. I hesitated. Thomas told me yesterday that she'd had miscarriages too, that seeing me was like finding the child she was meant to have. So she took you. Catherine's voice was flat, controlled, but I could hear the decades of pain beneath it. Yes. And Thomas? He went along with it, helped plan it. I couldn't meet her eyes. I'm so sorry. Oh, Lily. Catherine took my hands in hers. You have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing. You were a child, an innocent victim. Eleanor, I corrected automatically, then winced. I mean, that's my name now. That's who I've been for 50 years. Catherine nodded slowly. Of course. I'm sorry. An uncomfortable silence fell between us. 5 decades of separation creating a chasm too wide to cross in a single conversation. Would you like some tea? Catherine finally asked, standing. I was just about to make some when I saw you. Yes, please, I said, grateful for the mundane normalcy of the offer. I followed her to the kitchen, a bright space with copper pots hanging overhead and herbs growing in the window. As she filled the kettle, I noticed her medical degrees framed on the wall. Harvard Medical School, residency at Mass General, fellowships and honors I couldn't begin to understand. Arthur said you became a top pediatric surgeon, I said. She smiled slightly. I needed purpose after losing you. Saving other people's children gave me that. And James? Arthur mentioned you separated. Catherine's hand stilled on the teacups. Grief affects everyone differently. James needed to talk about you constantly. I couldn't bear it. We both thought the other's coping mechanism was wrong. She shook her head. We divorced when it became clear you might never be found, but we never stopped searching for you together. The kettle whistled, and she poured steaming water over tea bags. He remarried about 10 years ago. A lovely woman named Carol. They live in New Hampshire. He's retired now. He was an architect. I nodded, trying to absorb this information about the father I never knew. Does he know I've been found? Yes. Vivian called us both when she confirmed her suspicions. Catherine handed me a mug. He wanted to come with me to the hospital yesterday, but I asked him to wait. I was afraid it might be too overwhelming for you, meeting both of us at once. It was overwhelming anyway, I admitted. Finding out your whole life has been a lie isn't exactly digestible. I can't imagine, Catherine said softly. 50 years believing you were someone else. She hesitated, then asked, Do you have family? Children of your own? The question brought a smile to my face for the first time that day. Yes, twin boys, Matthew and Daniel. They're juniors at UMass Amherst. And my husband, Richard. We've been married 26 years. Catherine's eyes lit up. I have grandsons? You do. They're wonderful, smart, kind. Matt's studying engineering, and Dan is in pre-med. Pre-med, she repeated, a catch in her voice. Medicine runs in the family, it seems. I never knew that, I said quietly. There were so many things about myself I could never explain. My love of medicine. I used to read medical journals for fun, but neither of the Wilsons had any interest in science. My perfect pitch. I play piano and violin, but they weren't musical at all. James is incredibly musical. Catherine said. He played with the Boston Symphony Orchestra for years, cello, and medicine has been my life's work. And my eyes, I added. Sarah's were brown, Thomas's hazel, but mine are blue, Catherine finished, like James's mother. The simple confirmation of my genetic heritage, something most people take for granted, brought fresh tears to my eyes. There's so much I never knew about myself. We have time now, Catherine said gently, if you want it. The question hung between us. Did I want this relationship? This new mother who was actually my first mother? This rewriting of my history? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Richard again. I was about to silence it when I saw it wasn't Richard after all, but Boston Memorial Hospital. I should take this, I said. It's about Thomas. Catherine nodded, giving me space. Hello? I answered. The doctor's voice was solemn. Mrs. Calloway? I'm afraid your father passed away 20 minutes ago. We tried to reach you, but I understand. I interrupted. Thank you for letting me know. I ended the call and turned to Catherine, who watched me with concerned eyes. He's gone, I said simply. I'm sorry, she replied, and I could tell she meant it, despite everything he'd done to her. I don't know how to feel, I admitted. He stole me from you. He destroyed your life, your marriage. He and Sarah raised me in a house without warmth or affection. I should hate him, but he was still the only father you knew, Catherine finished. I nodded, tears spilling over. What kind of person does that make me? That I can still feel grief for him? Catherine set down her tea and came to me, taking my hands in hers. It makes you human, Lily. Eleanor. It makes you compassionate. And it tells me that despite everything they did wrong, the Wilsons must have done something right to raise a daughter with such capacity for forgiveness. Her words, so generous, so understanding, broke something open inside me. I collapsed against her shoulder, 50 years of confusion and loneliness pouring out in gut-wrenching sobs. And Catherine held me through it all, stroking my hair, murmuring soft words of comfort, doing what mothers do. The days following Thomas Wilson's death passed in a blur of contradictions. I attended his funeral as Eleanor Wilson Calloway, dutiful daughter, accepting condolences from distant relatives and colleagues who knew nothing of my true origins. Then I would return to Catherine's townhouse, where I was Lily Green, the miraculous return, poring over baby books and photographs, trying to piece together the fragments of my stolen past. Richard was supportive but bewildered, watching his wife of 26 years transform into someone else before his eyes. "Are you sure you're ready for all this?" he asked one night after I'd spent hours with Catherine and James, who had driven down from New Hampshire to meet me. "It's a lot to process at once. I've lost 50 years already," I told him. "I don't want to lose another day." The twins were equally stunned when I called them at college to explain. Matthew, always the pragmatic one, immediately asked about genetic health history, information I'd never been able to provide before. Daniel, more emotional, had fallen silent for so long I thought we'd lost the connection. "Dan?" I'd finally prompted. "Are you still there? So we have different grandparents," he'd said slowly. "Real ones, alive ones." "Yes," I'd confirmed. "Catherine is excited to meet you both." "When?" he'd asked immediately, and I'd felt a flood of relief that at least one of my sons was eager to embrace this new reality. Now, a week after the funeral, I sat in Catherine's study, surrounded by the evidence of her remarkable life. Medical journals with her name on the cover, humanitarian awards, photos of her with children from around the world who had benefited from her surgical innovations. "I've been trying to understand Sarah Wilson," I said, as Catherine brought in coffee, "to make sense of what she did." Catherine sat across from me, her expression carefully neutral. In our many conversations over the past week, she had been meticulous about never speaking ill of the Wilsons, despite the devastating impact they'd had on her life. "What's prompted this?" she asked. I sighed, running my fingers over a framed photograph of Catherine receiving an award from the American Pediatric Surgical Association. "I keep comparing the lives I might have had, with you and James versus with Thomas and Sarah, and the contrast is stark. Every family has its challenges," Catherine said diplomatically. "No," I shook my head firmly. "Not like this. You and James created a home full of music and books and science and love. The Wilsons created a mausoleum, perfect on the surface, empty underneath." Catherine's expression softened. Eleanor. That's just it, I interrupted. Even my name was a lie. A constant daily reminder of what they stole from me. Do you know what it's like to realize that everything, literally everything, you believed about yourself was fabricated? No, she admitted. I can't imagine that pain. I stood, suddenly restless, and moved to the window. Outside, red and gold leaves drifted from the trees lining the street. Last night, I dreamed I was 3 years old again, playing in that backyard in Waltham. But in the dream, I could see 2 paths stretching before me, one leading to your house, one leading to the Wilsons. And I knew, even as a child, that one path led to light and one to shadow. Oh, my darling, Catherine whispered. The thing is, I continued, I think I've been walking in that shadow my entire life without realizing it, always feeling that something was wrong, something was missing, but never knowing what. I turned back to her. When I became a mother, I finally felt like I belonged somewhere, like I had a purpose. The twins gave me what I'd never had growing up, unconditional love. You were always loved, Catherine said fiercely, every minute of every day, from the moment I knew you existed. Even when I didn't know where you were, I loved you. The simple declaration, so direct, so unambiguous, stood in stark contrast to the complicated conditional approval I'd spent a lifetime seeking from Thomas and Sarah Wilson. I believe you, I said quietly, and that's what I can't reconcile. You who actually wanted me, who planned for me, who would have raised me with love. You lost me, and they, who took me on impulse, who saw me as some kind of solution to their problems rather than a person in my own right, they got to keep me. It's a terrible injustice, Catherine agreed, allowing her composure to crack slightly, one I've struggled with for 50 years. I crossed the room and sat beside her on the leather sofa. How did you survive it? The not knowing? Catherine was quiet for a long moment, considering. I survived by refusing to give up, she finally said, by believing that someday, somehow, we would find each other again, and by channeling my grief into purpose, saving other people's children when I couldn't save my own. And James survived differently. He kept your memory alive through music, composed pieces for you on your birthday each year, built a studio in his home filled with instruments he hoped to teach you to play. She smiled sadly. We may have failed as a couple, but neither of us ever failed in loving you. I thought of the Wilsons' house, where my childhood piano lessons had been endured rather than encouraged, my achievements measured against impossible standards rather than celebrated for their own sake. I've been sleepwalking, I said suddenly, the realization crystallizing. My entire life I've been asleep, going through the motions, doing what was expected, trying to earn love that was never freely given. And now? Catherine asked gently. Now I'm awake, I said, the words feeling like truth as they left my mouth. And I'm furious. Catherine nodded, understanding immediately. That's natural, healthy even. Is it? Because I feel like I'm losing my mind. One minute I'm grieving Thomas, the next I'm so angry I can barely breathe. I keep thinking about all the moments that were stolen, not just from you and James, but from me. First steps, first words, birthdays, graduations, all experienced by the wrong parents. There's no timeline for processing this kind of trauma, Catherine said, the doctor in her emerging. You're entitled to feel everything. Grief, rage, confusion, even relief. Relief that you finally know the truth, that the disconnect you've felt your whole life wasn't your imagination. I nodded slowly, recognizing the accuracy of her assessment. There is relief in that, in knowing I wasn't crazy for feeling like an outsider in my own family. Catherine hesitated, then asked, Have you thought about what you want to do next? About your name? The question caught me off guard. My name. Whether you want to continue as Eleanor or reclaim Lily, I finished. The possibility hadn't even occurred to me, though it suddenly seemed obvious. I don't know. Eleanor is who I've been for 50 years. It's who my husband and children know. There's no right answer, Catherine assured me, and no rush to decide. I'm simply grateful to have you back in my life, regardless of what you call yourself. I studied her face, this woman who had given birth to me, who had lost me, who had never stopped searching. In her features, I could see echoes of my own, and beyond that, shadows of my son's. The biological connection was undeniable, a thread that had survived 50 years of separation. "I'm not the 3-year-old you lost," I said softly. "No," she agreed. "You're the remarkable woman she became, and I'd very much like to get to know her, if she'll let me." Something shifted inside me then, a realignment, a recalibration. For 50 years I'd been living someone else's version of my life, contorting myself to fit into a narrative that had been forced upon me. But now I had a choice. I could continue as Eleanor Wilson Calloway, forever defined by my kidnappers, or I could forge a new identity that honored both my past and my present, that reclaimed what was stolen while preserving what I'd built. "I think," I said slowly, "that it's time for me to decide who I really am. Not who the Wilsons made me, not who I might have been with you and James, but who I choose to be now." Catherine smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "That sounds like the daughter I remember. Even at 3, you were fiercely independent. 'I do it myself,' was your favorite phrase." The simple anecdote, a mother's memory of her child's personality, struck me with unexpected force. How many such memories had been lost? How many observations about my early character had the Wilsons erased? I stood abruptly, suddenly certain of my next step. I need to see the house again. In Waltham. I need to walk through the rooms where I started my life. "Are you sure that's wise?" Catherine asked. "It will be different now, occupied by strangers." "I know. But I need to reclaim that space, even just for a moment." I turned to her, resolute. "Will you come with me?" Catherine hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Of course. Whenever you're ready." "Now," I said. "I'm ready now." Outside, the autumn afternoon was fading toward evening, the sky deepening to indigo. As Catherine and I walked to my car, a sense of purpose filled me for the first time since Thomas's confession. I was done being a passive participant in my own life, done accepting the narrative others had written for me. It was time to write my own story, time to wake up. The blue Victorian looked different in the fading light, shadows pooling on the wraparound porch, windows glowing with warm light from within. Catherine and I sat in my car across the street, neither of us quite ready to approach. "The Morgans might not be home," Catherine said, "or they might not welcome strangers asking to tour their house." I clutched the steering wheel, resolve wavering. "You're right. This was impulsive. We should—" A tap on my window made us both jump. Arthur Donahue stood there, bundled in a cardigan against the evening chill, concern etched on his weathered face. I rolled down the window. "Thought that was you," he said. "Everything all right?" "Arthur," Catherine breathed, opening her door and stepping out. "It's been too long." The old friends embraced as I joined them on the sidewalk. "Catherine told me you still have the album," Arthur said, turning to me. "Found what you were looking for in it." "Some answers," I admitted, "but I have more questions now. That's why we're here. I wanted to see inside the house, but—" Arthur's eyes brightened. "Well, as luck would have it, the Morgans are away until Sunday. House-sitting for them, watering plants and such." He patted his pocket, keys jingling. "I could show you around if you'd like. Call it a personal tour." Catherine looked as stunned as I felt. "Arthur, are you sure? We couldn't impose." "Impose?" he scoffed. "Catherine Green, after 50 years of watching you grieve, I'd break down the door myself if it meant giving you back even a piece of what was taken." He turned to me. "And you, young lady. I held you the day your parents brought you home from the hospital. I have every right to welcome you back." His certainty steadied me, and I nodded gratefully. "Thank you." As Arthur led us up the path to the blue Victorian, I felt Catherine tense beside me. "Are you okay?" I whispered. "I haven't been inside since we moved," she admitted. "Too painful." I took her hand, our fingers interlocking naturally, as if they remembered a connection my conscious mind had forgotten. The front door opened into a spacious entryway with original hardwood floors and a curved staircase. The decor was modern, sleek furniture, abstract art, but the bones of the house remained unchanged. "Kitchen's through there," Arthur said, pointing. "Your nursery was upstairs, first door on the right." Catherine stood motionless in the entryway, eyes closed, hand pressed to her heart. "I can still hear you," she whispered, running down these stairs, laughing. I moved toward the staircase, drawn by an inexplicable certainty. My hand found the banister, and a flash of memory hit me. Small hands sliding along polished wood, the thrill of speed, a woman's voice calling, "Careful, Lily." "I remember," I said, astonished. I remember sliding down this banister. Catherine's eyes widened. James always let you do that when I wasn't looking. I was terrified you'd fall. But I never did, I said, the memory clarifying. Dad would always catch me at the bottom. Dad, Catherine repeated softly. You called him Daddy back then. Your first word. Another fragment slotted into place. A tall man with my blue eyes swinging me onto his shoulders, my small voice shrieking, Daddy, hi! I climbed the stairs slowly, each step resonating with half-formed memories. At the top of the landing, I turned right without hesitation, knowing exactly which room had been mine. The Morgans had converted the nursery to a home office. Desk by the window, bookshelves lining one wall. But the proportions were the same. The afternoon light slanting through the window just as it must have 50 years ago. Yellow, I said suddenly. The walls were yellow. Catherine nodded, tears streaming freely now. Sunshine yellow. You chose it yourself, pointed to the color chart and said, this one so decisively. I closed my eyes, trying to recapture the feeling of being 3 years old in this room. Fragments came. Sitting on the window seat with a picture book, playing with blocks on a braided rug, Catherine's voice singing lullabies. The closet, I said, moving toward it with certainty. There was something about the closet. Catherine looked puzzled. Just a normal closet, as I recall. I slid open the door, revealing a standard closet now filled with office supplies and winter coats. But something felt significant about this space. I knelt down, running my hand along the baseboards, not knowing what I was searching for, but certain I would recognize it when I found it. There, a small section of molding that seemed different from the rest. I pressed it, and to my astonishment, a tiny compartment popped open in the wall. What in the world? Catherine breathed, kneeling beside me. Inside the hidden space was a small metal box, dusty with age. My hands trembled as I lifted it out. I had no idea this was here, Catherine said, bewildered. This must have been built after we moved. The box wasn't locked. I raised the lid to reveal a collection of items that made no immediate sense. A newspaper clipping, a legal document, several photographs, and an envelope addressed simply, Lily. I lifted out the newspaper clipping first. It was from the Boston Globe, dated October 1975, with the headline, Search Continues for Missing Waltham Toddler. My own 3-year-old face stared back at me from a grainy photograph. The legal document was next. A deed transfer for the house, dated 1977, from James and Catherine Green to Thomas and Sarah Wilson. That's impossible, Catherine whispered, staring at the document. We sold this house to the Bennetts. I've never even heard of people named Wilson. I studied the signatures at the bottom of the page. That's Thomas's handwriting, I confirmed. But it's a different Sarah signature than I know. Silently, I removed the photographs. The first showed Thomas Wilson, much younger but unmistakable, standing on this very porch. The second showed Sarah Wilson, heavily pregnant, beside him. The third showed Thomas, Sarah, and a small child who was clearly me, around age 5, standing in front of a different house, the Springfield home where we'd lived before moving to Boston. I don't understand, Catherine said, shaking her head. How could they have owned this house? They didn't just kidnap me, I realized, ice forming in my stomach. They were watching you, stalking you. The final item in the box was the envelope. With unsteady fingers, I opened it and unfolded a single sheet of paper covered in Sarah Wilson's distinctive handwriting. My dearest Lily, if you are reading this, then you have finally found your way home, just as I always feared you might. By now, you likely know what your father and I did, that we took you from people who could never love you as we do, who could never give you the devoted attention you deserved. I will not apologize. Every moment with you has been a blessing we earned through our courage to do what others would condemn. Your real mother chose her career over you, leaving you with sitters and nannies while she played God in the operating room. We saved you from a life of neglect. Your father purchased this house when the Greens finally gave up and moved away. He thought I was crazy to want to live where it all began, but I needed to reclaim this space, to erase them from it. We stayed for only a year before your father's fear of discovery drove us away again, but during that time, I created this hiding place for the truth, a truth I knew would eventually need to be told. Whatever you think of us, know this. You were wanted, desperately wanted. And if that wanting led us to extremes, then so be it. I would do it all again to call you my daughter. With eternal love, your true mother, Sarah. The letter fluttered from my hands to the floor. Catherine picked it up, reading it with growing horror. She was insane, Catherine whispered when she finished. Genuinely delusional. She was obsessed, I corrected, memories rearranging themselves like puzzle pieces. With me, with you, with this house. She didn't just want a child. She wanted your child, your life. Arthur, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. I remember them, he said quietly. They came to the neighborhood before you disappeared, asking about houses for sale. Said they were expecting their first baby. Catherine's face drained of color. Sarah Wilson was pregnant when she took Lily? She must have lost that baby too, I said, recalling Thomas's confession about Sarah's miscarriages. And in her grief, she fixated on me. So she and Thomas planned it all, Catherine said, her voice hardening. Targeted our family, stalked us, learned our routines, and then came back and bought this house, I finished, as some kind of trophy. The magnitude of their deception, not just an impulsive kidnapping but a calculated, premeditated crime, left me breathless. Sarah Wilson hadn't just stolen a child. She had attempted to steal an entire identity, to erase Catherine and James and replace them with herself. There's more, Arthur said hesitantly. The police suspected someone had been in your house before the kidnapping. Things moved slightly, but nothing taken. They thought it might have been someone casing the house. Thomas was a locksmith, I said numbly. He admitted he knew how to get in without leaving evidence. Catherine stood abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself. They were in our home, before they took you, watching us, learning about us. Her voice broke. All so they could replace us. The hidden compartment, Sarah's letter, the house purchase. It painted a picture of obsession, far beyond what Thomas had confessed. Sarah Wilson hadn't just wanted a child. She had wanted to become Catherine Green. I need to know what else they hid from me, I said, rising to my feet with newfound determination. If they concealed this much, there must be more. Catherine looked at me questioningly. What are you thinking? The house in Lexington, I said, where I grew up after Springfield, where Thomas lived until last month. There might be more evidence there, more secrets. You want to search it? Catherine asked. I nodded, a sense of purpose replacing my shock. I've spent 50 years not knowing who I really am. I'm done with half-truths and mysteries. I turned to Arthur, handing him the metal box. Can we leave this with you for now? Of course, he said. It'll be safe with me. As we descended the stairs, I felt a strange sense of power building within me. The Wilsons had controlled my narrative for 50 years, hiding the extent of their crimes, manipulating my understanding of myself and my origins. But now the truth was emerging, one revelation at a time. Outside, the night had fully fallen, streetlights casting pools of yellow against the darkness. I turned for one last look at the blue Victorian where my life had truly begun. We'll come back, I promised Catherine. When you're ready, make some new memories to replace the painful ones. She squeezed my hand gratefully. Where to now? To Lexington, I said firmly. To the house where Eleanor Wilson grew up. I think it's time Lily Green paid a visit. The Wilson house in Lexington stood just as I'd left it a week ago. White colonial with black shutters, immaculate lawn, not a shrub out of place. From the outside, it was the quintessential New England home, projecting stability, tradition, respectability, the perfect facade for people with everything to hide. This is where you grew up? Catherine asked as we parked in the driveway. The contrast to the warm, character-filled Victorian in Waltham couldn't have been more striking. From age 7 onward, I confirmed, after Springfield, after they lived in your house. Richard's car was in the garage. He'd been staying here since Thomas's death, sorting through papers, preparing for the eventual sale. I'd been avoiding the place, unable to face the memories it contained. But now, armed with Sarah's letter and the knowledge of how deep their deception went, I was ready to confront the house and its secrets. The front door opened before we reached it, Richard's concerned face appearing in the glow of the porch light. "Elle?" he called, using the nickname he'd given me when we first met. "I've been worried. The hospital said..." He stopped short when he noticed Catherine beside me. "Richard," I said, steeling myself. "You remember Catherine. We need to come in." His eyes darted between us, taking in our serious expressions. "What's happened?" "We found something," I said simply, moving past him into the foyer. "And I think there's more to find here." Inside, the house was exactly as it had always been, tastefully decorated but cold, like a museum where nothing could be touched. Even as a child, I'd never felt comfortable here, always afraid of smudging a surface or disturbing the perfect order. Catherine hesitated at the threshold, and I understood her reluctance. This house represented everything she had lost, the years of her daughter's life that had been stolen, the milestones she had missed. "You don't have to come in," I told her gently. She squared her shoulders. "No, I need to see it, to understand." Richard watched our exchange with growing confusion. "Would someone please tell me what's going on?" I handed him Sarah's letter from the metal box. His expression darkened as he read, jaw tightening in anger. "Jesus Christ," he muttered when he finished. "They bought the house? They actually lived where you were kidnapped from?" "For a year, apparently," I confirmed. "But that's not all. The level of calculation, of planning. They weren't opportunistic kidnappers, Richard. They stalked Catherine and James for months. We need to take this to the police," Richard said immediately. "Thomas is dead, and Sarah has been gone for 15 years, I reminded him. "There's no one left to prosecute. But still, for the record." "First, I need answers," I interrupted. "All of them. I've lived with lies for 50 years. I won't rest until I know everything." Richard nodded, accepting my determination. "Where do you want to start?" I looked around the pristine foyer, considering. The attic. Sarah kept everything. Every report card, every school photo, every piece of my history she manufactured. If there's more evidence of what they did, it would be there. The pull-down attic stairs creaked as Richard extended them from the hallway ceiling. The smell of dust and old paper drifted down, a scent that had always made me sneeze as a child on the rare occasions I was allowed up there. Sarah organized everything meticulously, I told Catherine as we climbed. Boxes labeled by year, by category. Nothing ever out of place. The attic was exactly as I remembered, dim with dormered windows at either end, lined with identical storage boxes on metal shelving. Each box was labeled in Sarah's precise handwriting. Eleanor, school records, 1978-1982. Eleanor, dance recitals. Thomas, tax returns, 1980-1985. "Where would she keep things she didn't want you to find?" Catherine asked, scanning the shelves. I thought for a moment. "There." I pointed to a section at the back, near the chimney. Sarah's personal items. I was never allowed to touch those boxes. Richard pulled the first one down. Sarah, correspondence, and set it on the dusty floor. Inside were bundles of letters, organized by date, many from before I was born. As I flipped through them, one bundle caught my eye, tied with black ribbon and labeled simply, KG. KG, I repeated. Catherine Green? With trembling fingers, I untied the ribbon. Inside were dozens of newspaper clippings about Catherine, articles about surgical innovations, humanitarian awards, hospital fundraisers. Interspersed among the clippings were photographs taken from a distance. Catherine leaving the hospital, Catherine at a cafe, Catherine shopping at a grocery store. "She was stalking you," I whispered, showing Catherine the disturbing collection. For years, even after they took me, Catherine's face paled as she examined the evidence of Sarah's obsession. "This is horrifying." The second box, Sarah, personal journals, held leather-bound diaries, each labeled with a year. I selected 1975, the year of my kidnapping, and opened to a random page from August. Watched the greenhouse again today. Catherine left for the hospital at 7:15, as usual. The sitter arrived at 7:30. Lily was wearing a yellow dress with white socks. She looked so beautiful playing in the yard, so perfect. She deserves better than part-time parents who prioritize careers over their child. She deserves me. I slammed the journal shut, nausea rising in my throat. She was completely delusional. "Ella," Richard said quietly, holding another journal from 1985. "You should see this." The entry he'd found was dated on my 13th birthday. Eleanor asked about baby pictures again today. She doesn't understand why we have none from before age 3. Thomas thinks we should tell her we lost them in a move, but I've found a better solution. I took photos from the green album we found in their house and altered them. Changed backgrounds, clothing. Now Eleanor has baby pictures, and she'll stop asking questions. She stole your photo album? Catherine gasped. And altered the photos to make it look like I was with them, I confirmed, disgust turning to rage. My entire childhood was crafted from lies. We worked methodically through the boxes, uncovering more evidence of Sarah's obsession, false identification documents, detailed notes on the Greens' routines, even a floor plan of the Waltham house. One box contained financial records revealing that Thomas had paid cash for the Victorian when the Greens sold it, using a shell corporation to hide his identity. But the most disturbing discovery came in a box labeled contingency plans. Inside were multiple sets of identity documents for all three of us: passports, birth certificates, social security cards, under different names. A notebook detailed escape routes to Canada and Mexico, emergency cash reserves, and plans for what to do if they find us. They lived in constant fear of being caught, I realized. Their entire lives were shaped by what they did to us, and yet they never turned themselves in, Catherine said, her voice hard. Never gave us peace. As we continued searching, I found a small lockbox at the back of a shelf, unlabeled and covered in dust. The key was taped to the bottom, as if Sarah hadn't wanted it easily discovered, but couldn't bear to separate it from the contents. Inside was a single envelope containing medical records, Sarah's medical records. As I scanned the documents, the full picture finally emerged. She had postpartum psychosis, I said quietly, after her last miscarriage in early 1975. Hospitalized for 6 weeks, released just a month before they took me. Catherine took the records, her doctor's eyes quickly assessing the information. Delusions, paranoia, fixation on having a replacement child. She looked up at me. The doctors warned that she might harm herself or others. They recommended continued supervision, medication. But Thomas took her home instead, I concluded, and enabled her delusion that she could find a replacement child. I closed the lockbox, a strange calm settling over me. He wasn't just a passive participant. He actively helped a mentally ill woman steal a child rather than ensure she got proper treatment. Richard sat heavily on a dusty trunk. What are you going to do with all this? I surveyed the evidence we'd accumulated. The journals, the photos, the fake identification papers, the medical records. 50 years of deception, all laid bare in this attic. First, I said firmly, I'm going to call James. He deserves to know exactly what happened, to see the evidence for himself. Catherine nodded agreement. And then we take it all to the district attorney's office, I decided. Even if there's no one left to prosecute, this needs to be on record. The case needs to be officially closed. I looked around the attic, at the boxes containing the carefully curated fiction of my life. And then I'm selling this house. I never want to set foot in it again. Richard stood, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Whatever you need, Elle, I'm with you. I leaned into his embrace, grateful for his steadfast support through this impossible situation. Then I turned to Catherine, who was still examining Sarah's journals with a mix of horror and fascination. Would you, I hesitated, suddenly uncertain, would you stay with us tonight? At our house, not here. I think I'd like to continue this conversation somewhere that doesn't feel tainted. Catherine's smile was gentle. I'd like that very much. As we gathered the most important evidence into boxes to take with us, I felt a shift in the dynamic between us. No longer simply a biological mother and her long-lost daughter, but allies united in pursuit of truth and justice. The Wilsons had wielded secrets as weapons for decades, using them to maintain control over my identity and history. Now I was reclaiming those secrets, and with them, my power. In the car, Catherine examined Sarah's altered baby photographs with a surgeon's precision. She was meticulous, she admitted reluctantly. I can barely tell these have been modified. Sarah was nothing if not thorough, I said, steering toward our home in Cambridge. She created an entire false reality and maintained it flawlessly for decades. Except she didn't account for Thomas's deathbed confession, Catherine pointed out, or my refusal to stop searching. I glanced at her in the passenger seat. This woman who had lost everything but never lost hope. You never gave up on me. Never, she confirmed. Not for a single day. As we turned onto my street, I felt something like peace settling over me for the first time since Thomas's confession. The truth, all of it, was finally coming to light. and with it came the possibility of a new beginning, one built on honesty rather than deception. Tomorrow, we would call James, contact the authorities, begin the process of officially documenting what the Wilsons had done. But tonight, in my own home, with Richard, Catherine, and the evidence we'd gathered, I would begin the process of reclaiming my story, of deciding at last who I truly was. Not Eleanor Wilson, the kidnapped child raised on lies. Not Lily Green, the toddler frozen in time by a mother's unending grief. But someone new, someone who incorporated both experiences into an identity entirely her own. 3 weeks after discovering Sarah's hidden collection, I stood in the lobby of the Suffolk County District Attorney's office, Catherine and James on either side of me. The weight of the moment pressed down like a physical force. 50 years of lies about to become official public record. James Green had flown back immediately upon learning of our discoveries in the Wilson attic. At 78, he remained striking, tall and straight-backed, with the same blue eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. Our first meeting had been awkward, heavy with 5 decades of absence, but over the past weeks, we'd formed a tentative connection rooted in mutual respect and shared determination to document the truth. Ms. Calloway? The Assistant DA, Julia Martinez, appeared in the doorway. We're ready for you now. As we followed her into a conference room, I squeezed Catherine's hand. This moment had been weeks in the making. Interviews with police, consultations with prosecutors, careful cataloging of all the evidence we'd found. Today would be the culmination. Official statements that would close the kidnapping case that had remained open since 1975. The conference room was larger than I'd expected, and not empty. A court stenographer sat ready to record our statements. 2 detectives, one young, one approaching retirement, stood by the windows. And most surprisingly, 3 journalists sat along one wall. I hope you don't mind, Martinez said, noting my surprise. Given the historical significance of this case, we've allowed limited media presence. It's fine, I assured her, though my heart raced at the thought of our family's trauma becoming public knowledge. We agreed that the truth should be known. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of formal statements, evidence presentation, and careful documentation. I spoke first, describing Thomas's deathbed confession and our subsequent discoveries. Catherine and James followed, recounting the kidnapping and the devastating impact it had had on their lives. Detective Loring, the older of the 2 officers, provided historical context, explaining how the case had gone cold after years without leads. The Wilsons' methodology was sophisticated, he concluded, moving immediately, changing the child's name and appearance, using cash transactions to avoid paper trails. In the pre-digital era, without the surveillance and database capabilities we have today, they were able to simply disappear with Lily and re-emerge elsewhere as Eleanor. As the formal proceedings concluded, Martinez cleared her throat. For the record, I want to state that while the primary suspects in this kidnapping are now deceased, the evidence presented today is conclusive. Thomas and Sarah Wilson did abduct Lily Green from her home on September 3, 1975, and fraudulently raised her as their daughter, Eleanor Wilson. The case will officially be closed, with the Wilsons posthumously listed as the perpetrators. She turned to me with compassionate eyes. Ms. Calloway, I understand you have an announcement regarding your legal identity. I nodded, standing to address the room. Yes. After careful consideration and consultation with my family, I've decided to legally change my name to reflect both my histories. I took a deep breath. Going forward, I will be known as Lily Eleanor Green Calloway. Catherine's eyes filled with tears, and beside her, James nodded in solemn approval. They'd both assured me repeatedly that whatever name I chose would be respected, but I could see how much it meant to them that I was reclaiming Lily as part of my identity. As the meeting adjourned, the journalists approached, requesting interviews. I'd prepared for this moment, knowing that our story would inevitably attract attention. I'll make a brief statement, I told them, but I ask that you respect our privacy regarding certain details. The journalists gathered around, recorders extended. I straightened my shoulders and began. 50 years ago, I was taken from my family and raised under a false identity. Today, that wrong has been officially acknowledged, though justice in the traditional sense is no longer possible. My biological parents, Catherine and James Green, never stopped searching for me. The people who raised me, Thomas and Sarah Wilson, lived with the burden of their crime until their deaths. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. This is not a story with villains and heroes. Sarah Wilson was suffering from severe mental illness that went untreated. Thomas Wilson made the devastating choice to enable her delusions rather than seek help. Their actions caused immeasurable pain, but they were also the only parents I knew for 50 years. I gestured to Catherine and James, who stood nearby. I've been blessed with the miraculous opportunity to reconnect with my birth parents, to discover my true origins, and to integrate both halves of my identity. Moving forward, I ask for privacy as we continue this healing journey together. The Boston Globe reporter stepped forward. Ms. Green Calloway, how has this affected your relationship with your husband and children? My family has been incredibly supportive, I replied. My sons are forming relationships with their grandparents, and my husband has been my rock throughout this process. The reporter from the Associated Press was next. Do you harbor anger toward the Wilsons for what they did? I considered the question carefully. Anger is part of the complex emotional landscape I'm navigating, but I'm not defined by what was done to me, either by the initial kidnapping or by the lifetime of deception that followed. I'm defined by how I choose to move forward. The third journalist, from a local television station, asked, what would you say to other families of missing children who have never found answers? Catherine stepped forward, taking my hand. Never lose hope, she said firmly. We searched for 50 years, and though our reunion came later than we wished, it came. There are answers out there. James added, and to those who might know something about a missing child case, it's never too late to come forward. No matter how much time has passed, families deserve the truth. As the journalists thanked us and departed, Detective Loring approached. The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m., he confirmed. After that, the full case file will become public record. I nodded, the reality setting in that by this time tomorrow, our story would be headline news across the country. The private trauma we'd been processing would become public knowledge, examined and discussed by strangers who could never truly understand what we'd experienced. Are you ready for that? Catherine asked quietly, reading my thoughts. I think so, I said. The truth has been hidden for 50 years. It's time for it to see daylight. As we left the district attorney's office, a crowd of additional reporters had gathered, alerted by colleagues inside. Camera flashes erupted as we emerged. Questions shouted from all directions. James, with the protective instinct of a father, moved to shield Catherine and me from the onslaught. No questions until tomorrow's official press conference, Detective Loring called out, escorting us through the crowd to a waiting car. Inside the vehicle, I exhaled slowly, the tension of the day catching up with me. I didn't expect this much attention so quickly. It's an extraordinary story, Catherine said. A child found after 50 years, a deathbed confession, a lifetime of deception uncovered. The kind of story that usually doesn't have a happy ending, James added. But ours does, despite everything. I looked at these two people, my first parents, strangers just weeks ago, now inextricably woven into the fabric of my life. Does it have a happy ending? Catherine took my hand. Not an ending at all, she corrected gently. A new beginning. The car delivered us to my Cambridge home, where Richard waited on the porch. The twins had driven in from Amherst for the weekend, and through the window, I could see them setting the dining table for dinner. My family, all of my family, gathered under one roof. That evening, as we shared a meal, the conversation flowed more easily than I could have imagined possible just weeks before. Matthew showed Catherine his medical school applications, beaming under her expert guidance. Daniel and James discovered a shared passion for classical music. Heads bent together over sheet music at the piano. Richard and I watched from the kitchen, arms around each other, witnessing the healing unfolding before us. How are you really doing? He murmured, for my ears alone. Overwhelmed, I admitted. Tomorrow everyone will know. Colleagues, friends, neighbors. They'll all see me differently. They'll see you more completely, he corrected. The whole you, not just the parts the Wilsons allowed to exist. His perspective shifted something in me, a weight lifting that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. For 50 years, I'd lived a curated version of myself, unconsciously constrained by the Wilsons' need to maintain their fiction. Even after leaving their home, marrying, having children, establishing my own identity, I'd carried their limitations within me, their emotional distance, their fear of discovery, their need for control. But now, with the truth about to be fully public, Those constraints were dissolving. I was free to be angry, to grieve, to celebrate, to connect, to feel everything that had been suppressed for a lifetime. "I think I need to take a leave of absence from work," I said suddenly, after the press conference. "Not just a few days, but real time." Richard nodded, understanding. "To process everything? To get to know myself," I clarified, "and to get to know them." I nodded toward Catherine and James, who were now looking through a photo album of the twins' childhood with Daniel. 50 years of catching up can't be rushed. "Whatever you need," Richard said, as he had from the beginning. "I'm not going anywhere." I leaned into him, grateful for his steady presence amid so much change. Tomorrow would bring public exposure, media attention, and the final official acknowledgement of what had been done to me. It would be difficult, potentially overwhelming. But looking around at the people gathered in my dining room, my husband, my sons, my birth parents, I knew I wouldn't face it alone. For the first time in 50 years, I was surrounded by people who knew exactly who I was and loved me anyway. 6 months after the press conference that had turned our private trauma into a national conversation, I stood on the wraparound porch of the Blue Victorian in Waltham, watching movers carry the last of our furniture inside. The spring air was sweet with lilac, birds chattering in the newly leafed maples that lined the street. "That's the last of it, Mrs. Green Calloway," the mover called, wiping his brow. "Thank you," I replied, still getting used to my new legal name. The paperwork had come through last month. Lily Eleanor Green Calloway, officially recognized as the person I had always been and the person I had become. Richard emerged from inside, checking his watch. They should be here any minute. I nodded, scanning the street for Catherine and James's car. Today was significant, the first family dinner in our new home. When the Morgans had mentioned selling the Victorian, I'd known immediately it was meant to be. Richard had been skeptical at first. "Are you sure you want to live where it all began?" But had quickly understood the healing potential of reclaiming this space. A silver sedan turned onto the street, and my heartbeat quickened. Catherine and James had arrived. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of media attention, emotional processing, and gradual integration of my two identities. The press conference had sparked international interest in our story, the longest resolved kidnapping case in American history, the remarkable reunion of a daughter with her biological parents after 50 years. We'd declined most interview requests, but had allowed one in-depth profile in The New Yorker, hoping our experience might help other families of missing children maintain hope. My sons had embraced their newfound grandparents with an enthusiasm that had brought tears to my eyes. Matthew had even switched his medical school focus to pediatric surgery, inspired by Catherine's career. Daniel had begun weekly music lessons with James, his natural talent flourishing under his grandfather's guidance. As Catherine and James approached the house, I noticed they both carried gifts, housewarming presents for our new beginning in this old space. "It looks just as beautiful as I remember," Catherine said, embracing me warmly. At 75, she remained elegant and energetic, her surgical precision now channeled into volunteer work training doctors in developing countries. James hung back slightly, still sometimes uncertain of his place in my life despite our growing closeness. I stepped forward and hugged him firmly. "Welcome, Dad." His face lit up at the word, one I'd begun using only recently, when it finally felt authentic rather than forced. "Thank you, Lily." Inside, Richard was arranging flowers in the renovated kitchen. We'd maintained the home's historical character while updating it for modern living, and exorcising any lingering ghosts of Sarah Wilson's brief occupation 50 years ago. "The boys just texted," Richard announced. "Their flight landed. They'll be here in about an hour." Catherine set down her package on the kitchen island. Perfect timing. I brought dessert, that chocolate torte Daniel loved at Christmas. As Richard and James drifted into conversation about the renovation challenges of historic homes, Catherine linked her arm through mine. "Show me what you've done with the place." I led her through the house, pointing out the changes we'd made and the original features we'd preserved. When we reached the room that had once been my nursery, now converted to a guest room for the twins' visits, Catherine paused in the doorway. "We've come full circle, haven't we?" she said softly. I nodded, emotion tightening my throat. "In the best possible way." She ran her hand along the doorframe, lost in memories. "I used to stand right here, watching you sleep. Sometimes I'd stay for hours, just marveling that you existed. And now you can do that with your great-grandchild, I reminded her, smiling. Catherine's eyes filled with tears of joy. Matthew and his wife Emma had announced at Christmas that they were expecting their first child, a girl, in late summer. The timing felt poetic, a new life entering our family just as we were healing old wounds. I never imagined I'd live to see this day, Catherine admitted. After you were taken, I could barely imagine surviving the week, let alone decades into the future. But you did survive, I said, squeezing her hand. You held on long enough for us to find each other again. We made our way back downstairs, where James was showing Richard old photographs on his tablet, images of the house from when they'd first bought it in 1972. Look at this wallpaper, James laughed. What were we thinking? It was the 70s, Catherine defended, joining them. Everyone had awful wallpaper. The easy banter between them, former spouses who had found their way back to friendship through the miracle of our reunion, warmed my heart. Though they had never remarried, their connection remained, strengthened now by shared joy rather than shared grief. The doorbell rang, heralding the twins' arrival. The next few minutes were a chaos of hugs, exclamations over Emma's growing baby bump, and the hauling of luggage to upstairs bedrooms. At 30, my sons towered over me, yet I could still see the little boys they had been. And now, looking at them alongside Catherine and James, I could see the echoes of their biological heritage too. As we gathered around the dining table, I took a moment to absorb the scene. My complete family together in the house where my life had begun. The journey that had brought us to this moment was unimaginable in its complexity. Kidnapping, deception, loss, revelation, reconnection, and finally, healing. Few families could claim a story so extraordinary, so painful, yet ultimately so redemptive. Richard raised his glass. I'd like to propose a toast, he said, looking around the table. To family, the ones we're born to, the ones we choose, and the ones we find against all odds. To family, everyone echoed, glasses clinking. Later, as dusk fell and conversation continued to flow, I slipped away to the front porch, needing a moment alone to process the emotion of the day. The street was quiet, porch lights coming on as darkness gathered. From inside came the sound of laughter. Daniel at the piano, playing something comically off-key, the others protesting good-naturedly. I thought of Thomas Wilson, of his deathbed confession that had set this all in motion. You were never supposed to be born, he had said, his final acknowledgement of the fundamental lie at the heart of our relationship. Yet here I was, exactly where I was supposed to be, in the home where I was born, surrounded by the family I was always meant to have. The path had been unimaginably circuitous, marked by profound loss and suffering, but it had led, at last, to wholeness. The screen door opened behind me. Everything okay? Catherine asked, joining me at the porch railing. Perfect, I assured her. Just taking it all in. She nodded, understanding. It's overwhelming sometimes, isn't it? Having everything you thought was lost forever suddenly returned to you. For both of us, I agreed. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. So much remained unspoken between us. 50 years of missing history that could never be fully recovered. Wounds that would never completely heal. But alongside the loss was something new and precious. The chance to write the next chapters together. You know, Catherine said thoughtfully, all those years I searched for you. I imagined 1,000 different scenarios for how we might be reunited. But I never imagined this, that you would bring us all back to where it began, to reclaim this house and fill it with new memories. It felt right, I said simply, to take something that was broken and make it whole again. She smiled, eyes glistening in the porch light. That's exactly what you've done with our family. Inside, Emma called for us. Dinner was ready. As we turned to go in, I paused for one last look at the quiet street where my life had started 53 years ago. The path from that beginning to this moment had been unimaginably twisted, marked by cruelty and loss, but it had also led to profound grace, the grace of forgiveness, of second chances, of family found against impossible odds. Thomas Wilson's words had haunted me for months. You were never supposed to be born. But he had been wrong. I was always supposed to be born. Born to Catherine and James, stolen by Sarah and Thomas, and ultimately returned to my true origins. Every step, even the painful ones, had led me here, to this porch, this house, this family made whole at last. As I turned to join my loved ones at the table, I whispered the words I'd said to Thomas in that hospital room, words that had begun as forgiveness for a dying man, but had become my own path to freedom. I forgive you anyway. And in that forgiveness, of Thomas, of Sarah, of the circumstances that had shaped my fractured life, I had finally found the peace to embrace both who I had been and who I was becoming. Not just Eleanor Wilson, not just Lily Green, but Lily Eleanor Green Calloway, daughter, mother, wife, educator, survivor. A woman who had walked through fire and emerged not just intact, but illuminated. Inside, my family waited. All of them. The ones I was born to, and the ones I had made, united at last under one roof. As I closed the door behind me, I stepped not into the past, or even the present, but into a future unburdened by secrets, rich with possibility, and overflowing with love that had weathered the ultimate test of time. They said I was never supposed to be born. I kissed his forehead and forgave him anyway. And in that forgiveness, I was finally, completely born, into my whole self, my whole truth, my whole life.